Hey, we have reached the end of First Chronicles. We're going to knock out chapters 27, 28, and 29 today in the New International Version. First thing I want you to notice is how involved the people of Israel are with their country. Other countries are hiring mercenaries to fight for them, hiring out everything. What we're going to start reading here as we see the military support, that it was all Israel. They were all involved in it. And I want you to notice just how brilliant of an administrator David is as he organizes everything. He's organizing the army, he's organizing the temple and in his palace, and he's got all these things going on, and he does an incredible job with it, with his skills. So let's begin in chapter 27. This is the list of the Israelites, heads of families, commanders of thousands, and commanders of hundreds, and their officers who served the king in all that concerned the army's divisions that were on duty month by month throughout the year. Each division consisted of 24,000 men. In charge of the first division for the first month was Jashabim, son of Zabdiel. There were 24,000 men in his division. He was a descendant of Perez and chief of all the army officers for the first month. In charge of the division for the second month was Dodai, the Ahohite. Mikloth was the leader of his division, and there were 24,000 men in his division. The third army commander for the third month was Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, the priest. He was chief, and there were 24,000 men in his division. This was the Benaiah, who was a mighty warrior among the 30 and was over the 30. His son Amizabad was in charge of his division. For the fourth month was Asahel, the brother of Joab. His son Jebediah was his successor, and there were 24,000 men in his division. For the fifth month was the commander Shemhuth, the Azrahite. There were 24,000 men in his division. For the sixth month was Ira, the son of Ikish, the Tekoite. There were 24,000 men in his division. For the seventh month was Helez, the Pelonite, and Ephraimite. There were 24,000 men in his division. For the eighth month was Sibbecai, the Hushthite, a Zerahite. There were 24,000 men in his division. For the ninth month was Abiezer, the Anathite, and Benjamite. There were 24,000 men in his division. For the 10th month was Maharai, the Netophathite, a Zerahite. There were 24,000 men in his division. For the 11th month was Benaiah, the Pirathonite, and Ephraimite. And there were 24,000 men in his division. For the 12th month was Heldai, the Netophathite, from the family of Othniel. There were 24,000 men in his division. The leaders of the tribes of Israel: over the Reubenites, Eleazar, son of Zikri; over the Simeonites, Jephthah, son of Micah; over Levi, Hashabiah, son of Kemuel; over Aaron, Zadok; over Judah, Elihu, a brother of David; over Issachar, Omri, son of Michael; over Zebulun, Ishmaiah, son of Obadiah; over Naphtali, Jeremoth, son of Israel; over the Ephraimites, Hoshea, son of Azaziah; over the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joel, son of Pedai; over the half-tribe of Manasseh and Gilead, Iddo, son of Zechariah; over Benjamin, Jasiel, son of Abner; over Dan, Azareel, son of Jehoram. These were the leaders of the tribes of Israel. David did not take the number of the men 20 years old or less, because the Lord had promised to make Israel as numerous as the stars in the sky. Joab, son of Zeruiah, began to count the men, but did not finish. God's wrath came on Israel on account of his numbering, and the number was not entered in the book of the annals of King David. Asmaveth, son of Adil, was in charge of the royal storehouses. Jonathan, son of Uzziah, was in charge of the storehouses in the outlying districts, in the towns and the villages and the watchtowers. Isri, son of Calub, was in charge of the workers who farmed the land. Shimei, the Ramathite, was in charge of the vineyards. Zabdi, the Shiphite, was in charge of the produce of the vineyards for the wine vats. Baal-Hanan, the Gederite, was in charge of the olive and sycamore fig trees in the western foothills. Joash was in charge of the supplies of olive oil. Shitrai, the Sharonite, was in charge of the herds grazing in Sharon. Shaphat, son of Aldai, was in charge of the herds in the valleys. Obil, the Ishmaelite, was in charge of the camels. Jediah, the Meronothite, was in charge of the donkeys. Jaziz, the Hagrite, was in charge of the flocks. All these were the officials in charge of King David's property. Jonathan, David's uncle, was a counselor, a man of insight and a scribe. Jehiel, son of Hakmoni, took care of the king's sons. Ahithophel was the king's counselor. Hushai, the Archite, was the king's confidant. Ahithophel was succeeded by Jehoiada, son of Benaiah, and by Abiathar. Joab was the commander of the royal army. David summoned all officials of Israel to assemble to Jerusalem, the officers over the tribes, the commanders of the divisions in the service of the king, the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, and the officials in charge of all the property and livestock belonging to the king and his sons, together with the palace officials, the warriors, and all the brave, mighty fighting men. King David rose to his feet and said, "Listen to me, my fellow Israelites, my people. I had it in my heart to build a house as a place of rest for the ark of the covenant of the Lord, for the footstool of our God, and I made plans to build it. But God said to me, you are not to build a house for my name, because you are a warrior and have shed blood. Yet the Lord, the God of Israel, chose me from my whole family to be king over Israel forever. He chose Judah as leader, and from the tribe of Judah he chose my family, and from my father's sons he was pleased to make me king over all Israel. All my sons, and the Lord has given me many. He has chosen my son Solomon to sit on the throne of the kingdom of the Lord over Israel. He said to me, Solomon, your son is the one who will build my house and my courts, for I have chosen him to be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish his kingdom forever if he is unswerving and carrying out my commands and laws, as is being done at this time. So now I charge you in the sight of all Israel and of the assembly of the Lord and in the hearing of our God, be careful to follow all the commands of the Lord your God, that you may possess this good land and pass it on as an inheritance to your descendants forever. And you, my son Solomon, acknowledge the God of your father and serve him with wholehearted devotion and with a willing mind, for the Lord searches every heart and understands every desire and every thought. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will reject you forever. Consider now, for the Lord has chosen you to build a house as the sanctuary. Be strong and do the work. Then David gave his son Solomon the plans for the portico of the temple, its building, its storerooms, its upper parts, its inner rooms, and the place of atonement. He gave him the plans of all that the Spirit had put in his mind for the courts of the temple of the Lord and all the surrounding rooms, for the treasuries of the temple of God, and for the treasuries for the dedicated things. He gave him instructions for the divisions of the priests and Levites and for all the work of serving in the temple of the Lord, as well as for all the articles to be used in its service. He designated the weight of gold for all the gold articles to be used in various kinds of service, and the weight of the silver for all the silver articles to be used in various kinds of service. The weight of gold for the lampstands and their lamps, and the weight for each lampstand and its lamps, and the weight of silver for each silver lampstand and its lamps, according to the use of each lampstand. The weight of gold for each table for consecrated bread, the weight of silver for the silver tables, the weight of pure gold for the forks, sprinkling bowls, and pitchers, the weight of gold for each gold dish, the weight of silver for each silver dish, the weight of the refined gold for the altar of incense. He also gave him the plan for the chariot, that is the cherubim of gold, that spread over the wings and overshadowed the ark of the covenant of the Lord. All this, David said, I have been writing as a result of the Lord's hand on me, and he enabled me to understand all the details of the plan. David also said to Solomon, his son, be strong and courageous and do the work. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord God, my God, is with you. He will not fail you or forsake you until all the work for the service of the temple of the Lord is finished. The divisions of the priests and Levites are ready for all the work on the temple of God, and every willing person skilled in any craft will help you in all the work. The officials and all the people will obey your every command. Then King David said to the whole assembly, my son Solomon, the one whom God has chosen, is young and inexperienced. The task is great because this palatial structure is not for man, but it's for the Lord God. With all my resources, I have provided for the temple of my God. Gold for the gold work, silver for the silver, bronze for the bronze, iron for the iron, wood for the wood, and onyx for the settings, turquoise stones of various colors, and all kinds of fine stones and marble. All of these in large quantities. Besides, in my devotion to the temple of my God, I now give my personal treasures of gold and silver for the temple of my God. Over and above everything I have provided for this holy temple, 3,000 talents of gold, gold of Ophir, and 7,000 talents of refined silver for the overlaying of the walls of the buildings, for the gold work and the silver work, and for all the work to be done by the craftsmen. Now, who is willing to consecrate themselves to the Lord today? Then the leaders of the families, the officers of the tribes of Israel, the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, and the officials in charge of the king's work gave willingly. They gave toward the work of the temple of God 5,000 talents and 10,000 derricks of gold, 10,000 talents of silver, 18,000 talents of bronze, and 100,000 talents of iron. Anyone who had precious stones gave them to the treasury of the temple of the Lord in the custody of Jehiel the Gershonite. The people rejoiced at the willing response of their leaders, for they had given freely and wholeheartedly to God. David the king also rejoiced greatly. David praised the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly, saying, praise be to the Lord, to you, Lord, the God of our father Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and give strength to all. Now, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name. But who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you. We have given you only what comes from your hand. We are foreigners and strangers in your sight, and we are all our ancestors, as were all our ancestors. Our days on earth are like a shadow without hope. Lord our God, all this abundance that we have provided for building you a temple for our holy name comes from your hand, and all of it belongs to you. I know, my God, that you test the heart and are pleased with integrity. All these things I have given willingly and with honest intent. And now I have seen with joy how willingly your people who are here have given to you. Lord, the God of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, keep these desires and thoughts in the hearts of your people forever, and keep their hearts loyal to you. And give my son Solomon the wholehearted devotion to keep your commands, statutes, and decrees, and to do everything to build the palatial structure for which I have provided. Then David said to the whole assembly, praise the Lord your God. So they all praised the Lord, the God of their fathers. They bowed down, prostrating themselves before the Lord and the king. The next day they made sacrifices to the Lord and presented burnt offerings to him, 1,000 bulls, 1,000 rams, 1,000 male lambs, together with their drink offerings and the other sacrifices in abundance for all Israel. They ate and drank with great joy in the presence of the Lord that day. Then they acknowledged Solomon, son of David, as king a second time, anointing him before the Lord to be the ruler and Zadok to be the priest. So Solomon sat on the throne of the Lord as king in place of his father David. He prospered, and all Israel obeyed him. All the officers and warriors, as well as all of King David's sons, pledged their submission to King Solomon. The Lord highly exalted Solomon in the sight of all Israel and bestowed on him royal splendor, such as no king over Israel ever had before. David, son of Jesse, was king over all Israel. He ruled over Israel 40 years, 7 in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. He died at a good old age, having enjoyed long life, wealth, and honor. His son Solomon succeeded him as king. As for the events of King David's reign from beginning to end, they are written in the records of Samuel the seer, the records of Nathan the prophet, and the records of Gad the seer, together with the details of his reign and power and the circumstances that surrounded him and Israel and the kingdoms of all the other lands. So I wanted you, I should have said at the beginning, just imagine the crowd that was there as David pulls together everybody to show them that Solomon, his son, is going to be the king. He's proud of him, but not that. David sets the stage. He says, here, I'm giving all of this to God. Who else wants to step up to the plate? And all of these people gave to help in the fulfillment of the temple. Also, this is the first time when David is talking about God that God is referred to as our Father, and I think that's a momentous occasion that God is referring to. I mean, that David is referring to God as our Father, and so we're reminded again several times that all things come from God. It's not from us. I want to close. I read this. It says, by birth, this is David. By birth, a peasant. By merit, a prince. In youth, a hero. In manhood, a monarch. In age, a saint. And that's what David, he lived up to all of that. He was a man after God's own heart. Have a great day.